Since the pandemic began, Excellency, the United States has donated over 115 million COVID-19 vaccines to Bangladesh, and it's totally free of charges. It's accounting for more than 70% of all international coronavirus vaccine donations to Bangladesh. What is the reason behind that? That is the question.
So I think it's I think it's just one example of the partnership that we have between the United States and Bangladesh. And maybe it's just the most recent visible sign of that partnership. But the reality is that over the past 5 decades, we have contributed $8.1 billion in development assistance as a partner to Bangladesh. And this takes many different forms, both big and small. And so you give the example of the vaccines, where, as you said, we were the largest donor of vaccines to Bangladesh. And actually, Bangladesh was the largest recipient of U.S. donated vaccines in the world. But we've also done, we do a lot on disaster relief. We support your healthcare sector. We provide technical assistance to farmers so that they can be more productive. We do skills training. We work with your law enforcement and your judiciary. And we also work on a military-to-military basis. And then in addition to that, we're also the largest foreign direct investor here, the largest recipient of Bangladesh exports, and we have just a tremendous people-to-people relationship, I think evidenced most best by the number of students who go. So the vaccines, while an important thing and maybe more visible than a lot of the things we do, but just a part of that overall partnership that we have with Bangladesh. Complete respect for Bangladesh's foreign policy. As Sheikh Mujibur Rahman said, that Bangladesh is friends to all and has malice towards none. And the reality is, in this world, is that Bangladesh needs a relationship with every country in the world, whether it's China, whether it's Russia, whether it's the United States, whether it's India. No matter whom, Bangladesh has to have a relationship with them. And those relationships will be based on what is important to Bangladesh. And Bangladesh has done an amazing job with its relationships with China, with us, with the rest of the world. And we're not about anyone having to pick sides, that we are eager to partner with Bangladesh. The one thing that we do want to make sure is that Bangladesh continues to have the ability to make its own choices as a sovereign nation. So we're not particularly focused on the relationship Bangladesh has with China. We're really focused on the relationship we have with Bangladesh.
In early October, a pre-election monitoring team will come to Bangladesh, will visit Bangladesh. So we want to know actually, how does it work?
Sure.
What is the process?
So we work with 2 independent organizations, IRI, the International Republican Institute, and NDI, the National Democratic Institute. So bipartisan, they are independent, but they're professional at doing election assessments and observations. And so we're welcoming a team in early October, and they will come here, and they will have meetings with all of the stakeholders here in Bangladesh, from the government to the election commission, to political parties, to media, to civil society, to the security services, to law enforcement. And they'll be here to look at how well the elections are being prepared. They'll be looking at the context and sort of the overall environment for the elections. And then once they leave, they will deliver a public report on their findings, and they will also then have a conversation and make a determination about whether or not to recommend that the United States send an international election observation mission for the time of the election itself.
Especially U.S. State Department, Secretary Blinken, and you also, you are urging for that would suggest the election is going to be non-inclusive, because you are urging for inclusive election.
So I think you're right. I think the formulation we usually use is free, fair, and peaceful. And we also refer to in accordance with international standards. I think the other thing that we frequently talk about is an election where the people of Bangladesh can choose their next government. We don't use inclusive as often maybe as some others, but within the context of our free, fair, peaceful, I think inclusive has two separate meanings that you can look at. One way you can look at it is, does every individual, regardless of where they live, what their religion is, what their sex is, do they have the ability to vote? And so that's inclusive. Are they able to exercise their constitutional rights? Their right to free speech, their right to assembly, and as I said, the right to vote and to have their vote counted. And then the second notion of inclusivity would be, do all political parties believe that they have an equal opportunity to campaign? And can all political parties be confident that if they get the most votes, that they will win the election? And so, as I said, we talk about more free, fair, peaceful, but the inclusive part is definitely there in that everyone can vote and everyone has a chance to compete
level
fairly.
playing field before the election.
Exactly.
For all, right?
Exactly.
So, if the election excellency, if the election is
Yeah, and you know I don't answer hypothetical questions. I think the reality is that if you look at the United States relationship with other countries all around the world, you will find that we have better, stronger, and more robust relationships with countries that are democratic than those that are not democratic.
So, other than the commitments of the government and the election commission, have you seen any indication that the next election will not be a repeat of the previous two elections? I mean 2014 and 2018 elections?
Right. So I think when we talk about elections, I think the really important thing to discuss is not the elections the day of and what happens then. It is about the entire electoral process and the entire democratic process. And as you mentioned, that I have met with all parts of Bangladeshi society, with all of the political parties, with the election commission, with government officials, with law enforcement officials, with media, with civil society, and all of that. And what we always say is that each of them has a role to play, a critical role to play if there are to be free and fair elections starting today. And that if any one of them doesn't play their role, and then it's really hard to expect there to be free and fair elections. And so let me give you some examples. If, for example, any political party is not allowed to hold rallies, it's hard to imagine a free and fair election if they are prevented from having rallies. If newspapers...
if they don't have freedom of association like that.
Freedom of assembly,
Right.
yes.
Assembly.
Similarly, if there's no freedom of media, if media outlets are under pressure not to report things or have to engage in self-censorship, and then it's hard to have free and fair elections. If law enforcement officials enforce laws on only certain parts of the society and not on others, it's difficult to have free and fair elections. When political parties or people gather, and sometimes the internet is cut off and sometimes it's not, it's hard to have free and fair elections. And so I think you understand that it's not just the day of, it is the entire environment in the lead
You are
up.
continuously speaking about it.
Yes,
The election
exactly.
It's not about one day.
It's not about one day.
Right.
Exactly. Because Bangladesh has been such a development success story. And that people are watching to see what happens going forward and whether that development success story can be continued. And so it circles back to investment and whether people want to invest. And so I think a lot of people are looking at Bangladesh because of its the progress it's made over the past couple of decades and its potential for the future. And so they're looking at the elections as a signal of where Bangladesh is going. In terms of other countries, like-minded countries, the UN, every country has its own policy. Every country approaches Bangladesh in their own way. I think you have seen in the past several months that there have been a number of cases where a number of like-minded countries have joined together and joined our voices to make statements on what's happening here in Bangladesh. But it's not our job as the United States to corral them and bring them all together. It's that we are expressing our views, and when those views are the same as other countries, we think it's important to join voices together.
How is it as a envoy, as an influential envoy, how do you evaluate the Bangladesh future in the democracy?
Bangladesh's future as a democracy is in the hands of Bangladesh itself and the Bangladeshi people. And it's a responsibility for everyone to take the country forward in the direction that the people of Bangladesh want to. I think one of the things that I would say is that it's important for people to think about what do we do today to fulfill the promise of Bangladesh for tomorrow. So whether you're looking at Vision 2041, no matter what you're looking at, it's the decisions that people take today that will determine the Bangladesh of tomorrow. And I think it's really important to continue to focus on that moving forward.
We've seen the American reaction on the conversion of Digital Security Act to Cybersecurity Act. Can you elaborate any this reaction?
Yeah.
Can you?
It's been no secret that the United States has found the Digital Security Act to have some troubling provisions. And it's no secret that we believe that in many cases it has been used to stifle critical voices, that it has been used against the media, and been used in a way that, at least we've been told, it was not intended to be. And so we welcome the idea that the legislation is being repealed and replaced. I think it is too early. We have not seen a copy of what the new law looks like. And so I think it's too early for us to be able to comment on whether it is better, how much better, whether it matches international human rights standards. So we welcome the idea that the government is going to share the text, is going to seek comment on it, and that we hope to see that the Cyber Security Act going forward is one that strikes the right balance between freedom of speech and protection against criminal activity.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.